Mr. President.
Senator from Florida.
Mr. President, since being elected to the United States Senate about 3 years ago, I have spoken often about the dangers presented by Communist China. I have not been alone in this. Colleagues on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, and independents in this body, have been vocal about the threats we face from General Secretary Xi and his communist regime. While we may not always agree on the solutions to the problems caused by Communist China, I feel we are united in a truth. The good people of China are being brutally oppressed, censored, intimidated, and manipulated by the Chinese Communist Party, a regime that wants nothing more than to dominate the world and extinguish the democratic values and true freedoms we so proudly stand for. Communist China's actions have repeatedly made this fact clear to all freedom-loving people across the world. Its latest attack on liberty and freedom of Peng Shuai demand our attention. Ms. Shuai is one of China's most recognizable athletes. She is a three-time Olympian and was ranked the #1 doubles player in 2014 by the World Tennis Association. She has won championships at Wimbledon and the French Open and has represented her country at the highest levels of tennis competition. So when she shared her story of sexual abuse by a former vice premier of the Chinese Communist Party last month on social media, it rightfully caught the attention of the world. And Communist China's reaction to these disturbing allegations have both shocked us all and completely verified all our fears. Instead of taking Ms. Shuai's claims seriously and investigating these allegations, the Communist Chinese government followed its authoritarian playbook: silence, deflect, and cover up. General Secretary Xi and his communist thugs are so thin-skinned, weak, and intolerant of any questioning of their conduct that the government immediately silenced and disappeared Ms. Shuai. For more than 2 weeks, a global outcry arose, led by the Women's Tennis Association, asking, "Where is Peng?" Then Communist China's state media released what it said was an email from Ms. Shuai to the Women's Tennis Association reversing her allegations. It read like a hostage note, and it only raised more concerns as to her whereabouts and safety. Then the Communist Chinese government shared a couple of videos of Ms. Shuai at various structured public events and staged 2 video calls with the International Olympic Committee. Shockingly, the International Olympic Committee didn't ask about her disappearance. They didn't ask about her allegations of abuse. But are any of us surprised? I've been pressing the International Olympic Committee to speak up against Communist China's genocide, attacks on democracy, and other abuses for 2 years. They have been completely silent. The IOC's failure to ask these questions revealed that it is more interested in appeasing the Chinese Communist Party and maintaining its good relationship with the genocidal communist regime than the safety of athletes. I'm not the only one who believes this. Last week, world-renowned sports broadcaster Bob Costas appeared on CNN and told the truth that I've been sounding the alarm on. The IOC is in bed with Communist China. It's disgusting, but that's the truth. Fortunately, the World Tennis Association took real action to stand up for Ms. Shuai. Last week, the WTA announced it would be suspending all of its events in China until it was clear that Ms. Shuai was safe and in good health. The WTA is also calling for a full-fledged and completely transparent investigation into Ms. Shuai's allegations. We should applaud the WTA for doing the right thing and showing the world how sport can stand up to an evil, authoritarian communist regime. This is what courage looks like, and I believe it ought to be celebrated in this body. The IOC, on the other hand, is bending over backwards to keep Communist China happy. We have American athletes and coaches traveling to Beijing in just weeks. It's terrifying. If Communist China is willing to do this to its own citizens, how do we know Americans will be safe during the Olympics? We must demand that Ms. Shuai immediately be freed from censorship, coercion, and intimidation, and that there be a full investigation into her serious allegation of sexual assault against former Vice Premier Zhang Guoli. That's why I've introduced a resolution calling exactly for that. Now, I'm thankful that Senators Lummis, Rubio, Braun, Hawley, and Cruz have joined me. The United States is the leading voice of freedom and democracy around the world. We cannot tolerate this kind of behavior, and I urge my colleagues to stand together today for human rights and help pass this good resolution. As if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of Senate Resolution 474, which is at the desk. I further ask that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object. Mr. President, if
Majority Whip.
I can be recognized, let me say to my colleague from Florida, I like your resolution. I really think it speaks to the sentiment shared by the vast majority, maybe even all of the United States senators. I'm not certain how to pronounce this young lady's name. Is maybe Peng Shuai.
Suppose it's Peng Shuai.
Peng Shuai. Well, I'm going to accept you as my Mandarin coach and refer to her as Peng Shuai. And it's outrageous. She reports sexual abuse by a high-ranking official, and then she disappears. And they feed us occasional videotapes. Well, I want to join you in commending the World Tennis Association. And I also want to add that I think the President was correct in not only saying that we were going to withhold any diplomats being sent over to China during the next round of the Olympic Games, but I understand the administration's reaching out to other countries to join us, whether it's the Uyghurs or whether it's Ms. Peng Shuai. Outrageous human rights abuses should not be ignored. And as I glance at your resolution here, it looks to me like you hit the nail on the head. So why am I reserving the right to object? Here's something that I think would be helpful in the cause of human rights. What if the United States of America actually had an ambassador in China? Think about that possibility. We would have someone representing our country on the scene in Beijing, working for the United States, speaking up for human rights. Well, what's holding us back? Why won't Biden nominate somebody for this job? Well, it turns out he did. A man named Nicholas Burns. Well, we all know him. He has a long record of diplomacy and foreign service in Russia and other places. He's a key man in the State Department and one that we can rely on. And he should be in Beijing fighting for the causes that you and I agreed on today. What could possibly be holding him up? We need him there. Well, it turns out he's being held up by that side of the aisle objecting to his being called. But we have a chance to solve that today. We can not only pass your resolution, but we can appoint Mr. Burns as the ambassador to China and get it done, and he can be on a plane in the morning. How about that? That would be an amazing thing to accomplish. Take that home to Florida. I'll take it home to Illinois. It's a good day's work. And so to reach that end, I ask that the pending request be modified as follows. Notwithstanding Rule 22, the Senate proceed to the consideration of the following nomination, Calendar 525, R. Nicholas Burns of Massachusetts, to be Ambassador of the United States of America to People's Republic of China. The nomination be confirmed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination, the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action. Then, as if in legislative session, the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of your resolution, S-Res 474, submitted earlier today. The resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table without intervening action or debate. What an amazing bipartisan achievement that we can put together in just a few minutes here.
Will the senator from Florida so modify his request?
Mr. President.
Florida.
Reserving the right to object. First, I thank my colleague for agreeing that I think we all agree that what's happened to Peng Shuai is wrong. And I think we all know we have to stand up to what Communist China is doing. Here's my concern about Nick Burns. Until the day he was nominated by President Biden, he had no problems with Communist China. He's never stood up to Communist China. He's been taking money from Communist China. He's always looked the other way. And so my concern is that, we ought to have a vote on him because everybody ought to have the opportunity to talk to him and get his position, because everything I've talked to him, and he's never ever said a word about the Uyghurs, Tibetans, about what happened in Hong Kong, about stealing American technology. He's never done any of those things, and so I don't know how it's going to help us. I'll object to the modification, but I hope my colleague will agree that the resolution itself is worth it to go forward and just do it by themselves. And over time, we'll have a vote on Nick Burns.
Objection is heard to the modification. Is there objection to the original request?
Mr. President, time's wasting. We need an ambassador in China. I'm sorry, but I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
Senator from Florida.
All right, so this is pretty disappointing. All right. So my Democrat colleague said that he agreed with the resolution. I think it's time that we stand up for the Chinese citizens that are being oppressed by Secretary Xi. You know, what this resolution does is say that, you know, we've got to stand up to all the oppression in China. We've got to stand up for Peng Shuai. We need to, this is the resolution that says, you know, athletes that are going over there, we have your back. And if you look at what's happening now, the Democrats are saying we're not going to do those things, and I don't think that's right. So I don't believe our platform in the Senate should be that we don't stand for alleged victims of sexual assault. I think by not having this resolution approved today and having the Democrats block it, that's exactly what we're saying. So it's pretty disappointing. This is a basic resolution that said that we're going to stand up for Peng Shuai. I'm very appreciative of what the WTA has done. I'm very disappointed with the NBA has done. I'm disappointed with the IOC has done. And I'm disappointed that the Senate today could not come to a resolution to simply stand up for somebody that's accused the Vice Premier of China of sexual assault. You know, none of us would like that to happen to anybody in our family. We don't want it to happen to anybody in this country. And we ought to stand up for people in China just like we want to stand up for people in this country.